Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks out there. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ. And for those who don't know, we take a subject each week. Yes, the show is live Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time this time. And we will take a subject. This week, we're going to talk about food and drink and subdivide it based on the day. Today's Monster Monday. We have Discord Tuesday, World Building Wednesday, and so on. And I thought those that join our Discord, usually just before the show and a little bit after the show, we'll have ourselves a little bit of talk about different subjects. And we got to joking around quite a bit and talking about food and drink. And I thought that would be a great subject to explore for tabletop RPGs. Now, today's Monster Monday, which definitely means we're going to talk about all the goodness that comes with talking about food and drink. So here's a little bit of a test for you, okay? Think now about one or multiple. You don't have to restrict yourself to one, but think about one of your favorite foods and one of your favorite drinks. And then think about why. What is it about food and drink that is like a measurement of the best and worst in our lives? Sometimes many of us have a favorite food, not even because of its taste, but how it makes us feel consuming it. Maybe there's a family member or a best friend that has a great recipe. Maybe you remember having a drink that reminds you of something historical, something in your past, whether it's joyful or somber. Lots of food and drink describe exactly how we interact with people. Deadman says that Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim includes food and drink, and you can make foodstuffs in game. And Ogre mentions flavor, texture, memory. Food tells us a lot about who we are and what we are in any particular moment. I can tell you that there are very popular, especially I can speak for here in the States, there's very popular meals literally based around the people, that blue collar, hard working people. It's not about necessarily the flavor, but it's about the heartiness. Barbecue comes to mind. Po' boy sandwiches, Piemonte sandwiches. Ogre's like mac and cheese. Yeah, sometimes you need a hearty meal. I know here in the United States, breakfast has its own meats and flavors and design. Food is not just about consuming nutrients, although lots of foods are designed to pack in calories or become savory or allow us to eat things that normally we would not be able to eat based on our locale and position in life. A lot of food has a lot to do with status, has a lot to do with celebration. Food and drink is the easiest nonverbal communication we can have with another individual in any context. Most of the time, offering someone food and or drink when they are down, when they don't understand you, when they're confused, when they are your enemy, has the potential to not just solve a problem, but also bring about new beginnings or really someone's end. Ogre's like, for the U.S. at least, I didn't have it until I was past 35. I hope you're referring to. I hope you're referring to breakfast. Yeah, which is a literal translation of break fast, which is yet another thing. The non-consumption of certain foods has a lot of historical and religious and even political or celebratory connotations, as well as the idea that to the end of someone's life, a last meal is a thing in when someone's taking a death row. A last meal. Why a meal? Why not a last communication with a loved one or to see something beautiful at your last time? But nope, we break it down to last meal. Yep, and depending on how we eat our meals too is gives us a clue about how our day is proceeding. Some people, and remember, we're not just talking food; we're talking drink. What kinds of drinks do you have? Coffee in the morning, a glass of wine, certain types of things we consume as fluids are fast and quick and energy. I don't even care what it tastes like. I just need it because I need to fuel my body. Other drinks are specifically designed to move in your body slowly. You savor the entire experience. Okay, so Monster Monday. What does this have to do with Monster Monday? Well, we're not really going to talk too much about beasts, although this will involve them a little bit. But a lot of our NPCs and our interactions with player characters could involve what it is that our player characters and NPCs are, well, eating. And Dead Man's like feeding people to dragons. That's a thing as well. I guess I'm thinking that we can talk about the not just what people are eating or creatures or monsters or otherworldly beings and whatnot, but also the context into which we are eating those things. What I mean is there's a difference between, say, ragged, intrepid explorers scarfing down, some kind of smoked meat or jerky just to get some nutrients in their body, opening up their rations, all the way to having a feast to celebrate the coronation of a king or to, have a kill out in the wild and to honor the death of the animal before it is consumed, and all bits and pieces of that animal are used for, later survival or something. Food and drink has a lot to do with timing, like the aging of certain types of alcohol, or finding a rare species of some type of animal or even plant matter that is seasonal or regional or considered to be, lucky. Something, you know, wives' tale wise, that if you are able to find a particular root or ripe fruit or hive, these are things that I think can shape the way we interact with some of our creatures and monsters. And like Dead Man says, yeah. Then of course there's the monster menu all, yeah, the ridiculousness of like and stuff, and the side effects of eating said things. Absolutely. Omen says, for instance, the difference between cold beer and hot sake. A good question would be how a Minotaur would feel about beef. I've often wondered that too. I've wondered. There is the concept of like the player characters, of course, are like, oh, I want to eat anything, and the sentient other species are tapping their foot and folding their arms, like, how again did you get those steaks? Minotaur all mad, or the Minotaur wakes up in the middle of the night, like, what the? Who's touching me? Someone else is like, we were trying to get some milk. And he's like, that's not milk. Or maybe it is. Wow. Anyway, but getting away from the ridiculousness of some of these things, yep, Minotaur milk is the idea that having a meal sometimes could allow us to, especially in your world building, could really allow us to have some interactions that normally we normally wouldn't have. An example is the classic dinner, the classic tuxedo dinner with the main antagonists and the main protagonists, such as James Bond or something. The player character is invited to a festival out in the woods, or a tribal gathering, or a druidic circle. Maybe there are in a main festival, people get together and they cook certain foods because they're in celebration of a local harvest. And how the player characters interact, some may just not even care. Others may get together with family or friends. Sometimes just how you interact with food and drink says a lot about you, and then tells you a lot about the people that you're dealing with. Pet Ogre's like, got Minotaur posters on the walls. Yeah, with a nice white milk milk mustache. Oh shit. Minotaur's grinning in the background. People drinking like, what? It's thick. I don't care what. Anyway, also how there may be rituals involved in the process before, during, and after a meal. A hunt that someone is the PCs are tasked to go on before the main meal to hunt down a particular specimen of animal. Maybe there are particular types of drinks that are aged and they are valued because of their aging. I'm thinking about alcohols here. There are sometimes there are meals based on your region that some think nothing of it. A coastal region, shellfish and other types of fish and seafoods and things are pretty common, but maybe inland it's very valuable. And transporting food and drink items from one place to another, or at least the ingredients to create them, is pretty important. One thing that has a very high social status in a community is someone who is any type of food connoisseur, whether they prepare the foods like a chef, a person that creates wine, baristas, people who create beer. Those individuals are highly valuable in society, including to the fact that even in times of death and destruction in war, you know who's one of the most valuable people you can have in a wartime setting? Someone who can create a meal that's just far better than something that tastes like stale cardboard. And those individuals, that person that can create that one home cooked meal that brings about a mental stability when everyone is stressed out, can be very important. So, in your world, maybe there are certain types of beings or classes of when I'm not classes numerically, but classifications of people who are very important. Especially if there's someone like, let's take a classic like hag, a hag who concocts potions, the herbalist, the apothecary. But maybe this individual is all of that, but none of that. Maybe this person makes particular meals and places their concoctions inside the meals. More than just a potion. Maybe they make small pastries and cakes, or they prepare a 5-course meal, and by the end of the meal, the effects of whatever it is that they're trying to do come about. There are some things that we consume. I'm going to include this in the food and drink, but there are some things that we consume that aren't necessarily food or drink, but are inside of that. Things that we smoke, effervescence, hookah, cigars, and cigarettes and things. I would include those as well. And if you want to include things like potions, potions and scrolls, that's a very common default as far as magic items and gifts and things given to player characters. Why not make them regional or culturally important in the world? There may be a huge difference between the fantasy modern apothecary that has a powder that must be poured into a hot fluid, or an injection, or a very concentrated tincture where you just take a drip and place it under your tongue, versus something that's far more rural or tribal or feral, meaning like maybe there's a concoction made that's turned into a small sticky thing wrapped in leaves, or a stew that must be cooked, or again an effervescent that must be boiled, and the person must inhale it or something. The consumption of even arcane mixtures and items and benefits may have a dramatic effect on how the player characters use it. A potion, the classic golden liquid and healing potion might be a whole lot different if you actually have to prepare and mix the items first over hot coals before you can use it, which in and of itself narratively might just control how much of those things are in your world. Uh, Ogre says, you can consider which foods won't last in the region and create religious taboos surrounding the ones that go bad quickly. Yeah, a lot of our foods did come about because of food allergies, spoiling of certain foods. Again, some foods are extremely numerous in certain locations. I'll even pick up something like, say, apples or bananas as an example. Some things go just spoil very quickly. You don't want to bruise your bananas. Whereas if you live in a tropical location where there's lots of bananas, you could care less. If you live somewhere far, far colder region, getting those bananas to you safely without being bruised may come about. And even age has a lot to do with that. Grapes versus raisins, for example, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, Pet Ogre says, as an example, in hot climates, pork easily gets trinicella. Could be the reason the early priests in the Middle East banned it. Same thing with shellfish. Give it a few hours in the hot sun, and it'll be lethal. Yep. Up in the north, it'll be safe. Yeah. Sorry, I had to write that down. Least I forget. Yeah. Thank you, Dead Man, a cooking simulator. But you're absolutely right. Certain foods spoil easily. They draw predators. They draw disease. Certain types of infestation things. I'm looking at you, flies and maggots and other kinds of insects. The northern reaches here in the United States, you have coastal regions where they crab and grab lobsters fresh right out of the water and serve it that way. Some foods need to be kept alive. uh, um, the pick your own lobster or crab out of the barrel or the tank is a very common northeastern tradition here in the States. Whereas when you go into the southern regions, like you said, if you don't consume these things fast and early, or keep them refrigerated, or keep them from getting spoiled, that's very important. The mixing of dairy with other items, milk spoils quite easily without our modern ability to wow, I forgot how we clean milk. The word escapes me at the moment, but you get it. Tesla Ranger says, Jake Johnson, a comedian, talks about going to Hong Kong and running into chicken donuts and not understanding real Chinese cuisine because of different meanings of words. For example, beef. When we say beef, we mean the meat part of the cow, not just the eye. Yeah, pasteurized. Thank you, Dead Man. Jesus, my brain farts on me. That's what I get for TriCasting. But yeah, you're right. When you go to other cultures, the the best part, I think, and of course I brought this up, and you guys are, I'm sure, thinking the same thing. We have television networks completely devoted to food and drink. And of course, the side effect of that is travel or themes or certain types of ingredients that are very rarely used, or bringing new life to ingredients that are always used. And a lot of our culture has to do with that. As a matter of fact, you guys, Tesla dropped in a link in our Discord server to 50, strangest, oddest foods, people traveling around the world to eat things, brain sandwiches and eyeballs and insects and that kind of thing. Whereas many of us, that's a normal a normal um, a normal cuisine. Yep. Hey, have a great one. You got to go off to work. I understand. Um, wow, Jake Johnson. Ogre says another taboo we don't think about as much is that in Western society we do not eat carnivorous animals. I know people who had bear, but those are omnivores. Yeah, you know, again, not just what we eat, but what we don't eat could be related to role playing games, could be related to divinities. A one or more parts of a divinity could be related to something that exists out there. So, the a divinity related to, like you said, like a carnivore. You know, it's a taboo to eat the thing because it's an affront to the gods. How easy would that come about? Whether, you know, everyone's like, well, let's have some rabbit. And the people were like, you're about to eat what? And you're like, rabbit? Because they're easy to find and catch? Like, no! Don't do that. Also, there might be, because of how we eat some items, we eat all the time. You could place certain kinds of fruits and vegetables in that category. Who cares when you eat them? Just go ahead and eat it. There are some things that are reserved for times of day. For example, day drinking. The proverbial "it's 5 o'clock somewhere" idea that some people say day drinking is wrong. Is that a cultural thing? Why do we have a taboo about drinking in the morning? Depending on what you consume, tells you a lot about yourself. Are you consuming certain things at a certain time? Does that mean you're lazy, or rude, or selfish? How we eat. Do you offer the first drink to the weakest member of the group, or the lady at the table, or the noble with the highest rank? Or do we all not consume something until we give thanks to a divinity, or say something about each of us saying one thing about our day, or something we learned about the person to our left, and so many other things we can include in the simple consumption of a food or a drink. We've seen this used in storytelling, where the air quote barbarian starts to eat with their fingers and starts drinking and scarfing their food down, and then has to stop and look around while everyone else is looking at them, you know, being nice, prim, and proper, and this person's got, like, you know, oil and juice and drink spilled down the front of their tunic, right? Of course, it's been, you know, you could do that extremely dramatically or very subtly, but that is a thing. And food and drink allows us to communicate, right? How many times have we seen tension across a in a location where people are eating and drinking, and there are, like, threats being thrown, secrets being uncovered, the sheer drama, as you know, different storylines are separated. And when do they come together? Over a family meal, in a nightclub. Maybe it comes together in a tribal meeting of sorts. And even at the end of a meal, there's also a timer at the end of a meal, right? The meal's coming down. Now we're getting to our dessert. Now we're getting to our last drink. Now we're all going to go off and have some smokes or something. Now things are getting serious. Before we were joking. Now we're getting serious. And so there might be some kind of, like, tension timer for the player characters to achieve some kind of leverage, or uncover a secret, or make allies, and or create enemies, or throw a monkey wrench, bribery, theft, and all that kind of stuff, based on how long it takes everyone to consume their meals. And to gain an ally in a battle, or in a particular region, a rare type of ingredient, meat, drink, fruit, vegetable, may have to be transported from one place to another. And the player characters may even be scratching their heads like, we eat shellfish all the time. Why is it so important we take it from one place to another? Whereas this distant region may have never been able to consume those things, simply because of disease and spoilage or something. And that might be the one thing that the food or drink item, the maybe the one thing that becomes its own economy. Even here in the United States, NASCAR came about through the illegal transportation of alcohol across state and country lines, and prohibition. There's a whole genre, storytelling wise, about the era of prohibition, and making stills to create alcohol in the backwoods of Appalachia, and cars driving down the street, and illegal speakeasies having alcohol with the police breaking in and breaking those things up. That became its own genre in storytelling because of that period of American history. Tesla Ranger says Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Indy, Willie, and Short Round dine with their Indian hosts and are grossed out to find that every item on the menu is foreign cuisine. Live eel served inside a dead python, eyeball soup, steamed beetles, and for dessert, chilled monkey brains, served and sweet in chilled monkey heads. Hilarity ensues. Yep. The idea was that they were trying to get Indy and company to leave by deliberately serving inedible food. For one thing, live eels are toxic, so no sensible host on Earth would serve them. But it was poorly communicated, and the movie was banned in India for spreading racist stereotypes. I'll say it so you guys don't have to. Food stereotypes culturally are a thing as well, right? You know that. I'll say it. Chicken watermelon, right? That's a food stereotype, and sometimes those food stereotypes, they can be quite negative and can be used also as but could also be used as a joke. But I could imagine elves being your stereotypical elves being insensitive to the constantly eating and drunk dwarves, right? And a dwarf might be very offended by the idea that those elves are joking around like, "Oh, I know you've got a stash of alcohol. Don't you guys drink all the time?" And that in and of itself could be a great, fun way for some player characters to get a little bit of conflict in there about their eating, the various eating habits and such. And then what we eat, again, sometimes we have cultures where some of us eat things that are not palatable to one class of people, but tasty for others. Dangerous types of insects, poisonous types of animals, or how they're prepared, whether they're raw or cooked. Even things like rock stew and eating bark, and some things that normally, in your setting, are dwarves able to eat down solid rock? Maybe they do. Maybe that's a normal thing in yours. Or what is it? The elemental genasi may consume foods and things. We've seen many stories where to alter our perception of who we're looking at, there are aliens that eat spoiled foods that we've been throwing away for a long time. We saw Alien Nation. The aliens loved drinking spoiled milk. We see in District 9, they ate cat food. The aliens ate cat food. So you can have a lot of fun with this without, none of this has to be mechanical in any way, shape, or form. But when players see evidence of, say, the empty shells of turtles around a campfire, they may understand now, oh, those are the spearmen from the the Dread Coast or something, even though they're many thousands of miles inland, right? You could find some little bits and pieces of information given by who's eating what and how they're eating it and what the player characters are consuming. Even to the point of, for example, maybe create food and water or Goodberry is dangerous to use in a particular region because the predators or animals can smell it from miles away. Or carrying extra good berries in your backpack's not a good idea. Or the druid summoning up a small plant of good berries where they're camped out at and eating them off the limb is like an affront to some kind of ecological presence, or is it summons waves of insects or predators or something like that to the region, or hell, just being able to create food and water in a desolate location might make the at least that player character very valuable. Wanted to be kidnapped or something. You're going to create food and water for us forever. You're not going anywhere, cleric. You better do this now. And of course, many moons ago, I remember Dead Man mentioning that we even had the idea of player characters having their own arcane created foods flavored for their own region. A a northerner who creates food and water might have completely different food elements than a southerner, or hell, even a druid or ranger or something creating a good berry in a jungle might be completely different than one that creating one in the desert. What would it look like? Maybe their good berry looks like a beetle and just is described as a beetle, whereas someone else's good berry is a root or a seed or something like that. You know, just reflavoring it. Oh, there we go. Dead Man puts in in Shogun the movie. There was in the '70s, late '70s, I believe, the Shogun the series. It needs an update, but yes, the European in the book series or book series Shogun, they very much in reading the novel made the huge difference between European eating habits and the Japanese in that story, and it tells a lot about how people relate to each other and their communication, and even in a cinematic setting, a tea party, the idea of yep, the idea of sitting down and having being calm and hearing music and being served one portion of a meal after another is it's it has a lot of flavor without having to have a lot of action related to it, right? When we hear, as a matter of fact, just the idea of sitting down and having a tea ceremony, to me, automatically brings up the stereotype of the Japanese tea party. And I don't mean that in a bad way, like I think it's ridiculous. I'm talking like, oh, I'm imagining the things that go with it, the peace, the harmony that you should be having during such a thing, the elegance of it. So yeah, not only can you create a culture just about food, but how we consume it in the first place. Yeah, Scott Post says my druid's good berries are dates since they take a whole action to eat. Exactly, and mind you, this could be the interim of, let's say you feel your game, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or any other game, maybe you feel, or all the players feel like consuming things or how spells work or whatever is a little too cinematic. It's a little too like high energy. Maybe we want to gear it back down a little bit, make it more swords and sandals. One easy way to do that, of course, is to change how long it takes to use something. How long does it take to cast a spell? How long does it take to consume a potion? And now I know lots of people are like, well, consuming a potion is a bonus action or whatever. And it could be a little bit ridiculous as people are like, I'm drawing my sword, I'm casting a spell, I'm gonna stop, take a popper, drink this thing down, stop, put it back in my belt and start fighting with my sword again. I know some other people are like, that doesn't make any sense. It should take a full action. Now, depending on your table, I understand that bringing this up just will, what's the common term, nerfing my character. But if magic comes from the consumption of something that requires the consumption of something, limiting how fast or how often you can do that thing could be the narrative way for everyone to agree to say, you know what, yeah, sure, my character has these spell effects, but in order to do it, much like turning into a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, or the Invisible Man, or any of the other mutagenic concoctions, yes, I can do the thing, but no, it's going to take me a while to break out the concoction and consume it down or something, or find a safe place to be, to become a monstrous entity, or turn invisible, or read that person's mind by consuming this particular, you know, presuming this thing. Drunken Master. Yeah. Um, yeah, Deadman brings up the Drunken Master with Jackie Chan. Drunken Master 1 and 2. Drunken Master 2 was, I believe, nearly just around 20 years later. But yes, Drunken Master with Jackie Chan is a 1978 Hong Kong action comedy martial arts film directed by Yang Wu Ping, starring Jackie Chan. And as a matter of fact, there's even a very occult favorite of that that's an aside to it, called Dance of the Drunken Mantis. Harry, what's up? I always feeling that thumb, although not quite like milking the Minotaur, but close to it. I'm going to say you're close to it. But in Drunken Master, we know there's martial arts dedicated to being inebriated and the movements of a drunken person. In Dance of the Drunken Mantis, there are two characters fighting against each other. The poor holes in his shoes Sam Seed, drunken martial arts style, against his rival, who is the drunken mantis, who's a combination of being drunk and mantis style, and his clothes are like fine silks, and instead of like the big giant jug where the alcohol is pouring down Sam Seed's chin, the drunken mantis in adversaries got like the well-shaped gourd with the alcohol inside of it. And actually in that movie there's even I believe it's like either called magic style martial arts, involving like books and things like that. But yeah, Dante, yeah. Ooh, drinks. Glad I showed up for drunken martial arts. Well, we're talking about food and drink in general there, Dante. Us. Um, yep. Deadman says many games have a drunken master style that requires you to be drunk. Exactly. So yeah, what if consuming a certain thing is the only way for you to get to the level of that you are? For example, the classic hashishins, right? You have to smoke a thing or consume a thing that turns you into a an unfeeling beast of a warrior on the battlefield, and it culminates with music and drummings and just getting yourself into a frenzy, and then at the end, what do? You consume the thing for the purpose of consuming the thing, right? Harry says, depending on time period, water could be lethal. Uh, well. Also, we talked about not consuming certain things. For example, certain water sources could be poison because of, of course, not drinking. You don't want to drink salt water. You don't want to drink water from any unmoving source. You want it to be, of course, as free flowing as possible. There are there are certain. We again talked about regional types of foods. Maybe in the southern region of your world, consuming a certain food's no big deal. In the northern region, of course, it could be a taboo. It could be certain foods are consumed or not consumed based on circumstance, the death of a noble, the traumatic weather event like an earthquake, floods, or fires. So certain foods are maybe they are held in storage because they last longer than other foods, and so it's improper to consume them now. They are going to be used later, like rices and grains, seed, that kind of thing. Sometimes, for example, the eating of caviar is considered both an affront and a sign of wealth and privilege, as each fish egg can represent one egg could produce a fish that could feed a family, and then you have a rich noble who is eating caviar, scooping it up with a stale cracker. eating the value of what can go feed a whole family. And so the sharing of foods on one hand and the consumption of those foods really tells you a lot of who and what they are. Thank you there, thank you there, Dead Man. Puts a Drunken Master 2, and then there's a Drunken Master 3. I don't remember. Well, serializing those movies has always been a thing. I'd never remembered hearing about a Drunken Master 3 coming out. 1978 to 1994 with Drunken Master 2, Hong Kong action comedy Kung Fu directed by Lau Kar Lang and Jackie Chan. Yeah, there's yeah. um, th- that second one is a new. The '94 one is a new classic as well. That one's really great. Now you could make the case that a drunken master isn't really the only consumable skilled thing in your world. Maybe instead of those who have magic, it's not about reading spell books. Maybe it's not even about praying to the gods or reading some religious text. Maybe it's about consuming something that has been, the drinking of holy water instead might be the thing that transforms someone. Maybe maybe there is a ritualized method to a thing, or to like instead of your fighter being a fighter with skill, maybe fighter comes about through some the drinking of the blood of a certain predator that's been killed and whatnot. Now, later on this week, and I'll bring this up now because we will be coming towards the end, how we gather some of these foods might be important. If they're growing on the sides of mountains, maybe that it requires diving down deep into deep lakes, rivers, or oceans. They could be protected. Some foods are hard to get because of foliage around them. Thick spikes and thorns, or poisonous or allergic. Maybe peeling the skin off of a food is how you get to it, but the skin itself might be acidic or poisonous or necrotic or some such. I can imagine. Last week we talked about twins, the domain of divine twins. One radiant, the other necrotic. Maybe there's some kind of strange fruit that is necrotic on the outside, radiant on the inside, and vice versa, right? Radiant on the outside, but necrotic on the inside. You've got to be very careful handling it because on one hand you might be affected by one, and then on the other hand, for good, and then on the other hand, easily affected by the other one on the other side. That man says, if I drink enough holy water, will my blood become toxic to vampires? That's an idea. That what a great way to mix the two. Maybe there are a community that it's very important to have water blessed to become holy water, and them consuming it might give you a clue as to why the people do the thing in the first place. Whereas the player characters may come from a town like, why they're drinking holy water? Isn't that blasphemous? You shouldn't be drinking holy water, right? We use that in our rituals for the population, and they're sitting back like, dude, we need this holy water now. Like it's the sun's about to set. Come on, go, bless it, just bless it. Go. That holy water. I don't want to get too biblical, but the changing of the arcane changing of one food item to another, a fluid like water into wine or blood or acid or something like that it could tell the player characters exactly what's going on in a region. Imagine the players are going towards a place that has been desecrated by evil, and all the foodstuffs in their backpack become rotted within hours, if not moments. The player characters use their create water or food and water spells or good berry spells, and literally it comes out rotted and nasty and disgusting and infested, and they realize that there's a great evil in this world and they need to stop it because people are starving and they can't, the pestilence is rising to the point where it's affecting even the arcanic weave in the world. And so that could also give a clue as to what people are eating. Maybe even the food items aren't nutritional enough. There are rules for nutrition in Dungeons and Dragons, in all of the versions, all 5 versions, if I'm not mistaken, plus Pathfinder. Maybe this is the time to break out those rules when the players are like, you know what, let's make this a little harder. Let's say that we are counting our rations and we have to consume so many things in a certain amount of time or whatever. Hell, we here at Critical Hit Publishing wrote a book called Survival that details how to hunt, how to keep foods stable over long periods of time. So maybe people want to do some ration counting, and that might be a new thing in your world, and try it out. Pet Ogre says getting adventurers to gather ingredients is a common trope, but for a feast, yeah, the rogue and the fighter died so that the local court could have manticore stinger soup for the feast, and he only had 2 spoonfuls. Yeah, yeah, right. Maybe it's like hunt. Come on now, we've seen the trope of hunting down the legendary monster or creature, and maybe the hunt. It's like a fox hunt, right? Maybe the players have to hunt down Pegasus or Unicorn or something, like you said, Manticore. Player character like the fighter and rogue died. The player characters have got they've got like scars and they're sweaty, and they get there and they're sitting there, and the meal's brought out, and the noble's like, adequate. I say it's adequate. Everyone's PCs would be pissed. I'd be pissed. And hey, so with the Manticore, right? Manticore soup, and just take 2 servings. Oh man, Scott Post says, the wizard. Sorry, I can't take a watch shift, guys. But you know how out of it I am hitting my spell storage pipe. Yeah, I mean, come on now. The idea that the my characters. I'm from the divination spell group, right? I can see into the future, or out of body experiences, and how many drugs and things do we have, and smokes and things do that, right? But why not just reskin? You can reskin your wizard or warlock or cleric or whatever as someone who consumes things that take them to a higher plane of existence, whether everyone else believes it or not, right? Like when the player characters are like, "Is your elf sleeping?" and like, "Nope, I'm rolling a doobie, get my 4 hours in, dudes." Right? Oh man, stock photos, small spoon, big spoon picture. There are even certain types of utensils that are specific to using certain types, eating and cooking certain types of foods. Not that you want to get that too deep into the weeds, but it would be kind of cute to find like magic utensils. Like, oh, what's the little rod that you put a hard-boiled egg on top of, that's specifically designed to allow you to peel the hard-boiled egg without dropping it, or the tongs that are able to grasp, I don't know, mussels and oysters out of the bottom of like boiling tubs. A colander is another example of a very specific type of utensil that is used to cook with. So, putting the player characters in a big giant shish kebab. Hopefully, you haven't pierced them in the rectal area when doing that. But yeah, tying people up and putting them on a spit and turning them around. Maybe before the trolls eat the PCs, they have a little bit of a conversation about what's going on, and they're able to convince the trolls to stay awake when the sun comes up. Eating and consuming things, especially by the bad guys, while it allows you to put a little pin in it, right? Like, it's not just gonna be, okay, kill the player characters in another combat, or the player characters kill it. Maybe the enemy wants to capture the player characters to consume them, and this is a great way for you to have a little like social interaction. It also gives you a way to, in your toolkit, save your PC so the story continues. Being stuck in the spider's web, having your feet stuck in the ceiling, frozen in the ice, being kept to be consumed for later is always a great thing. And not only just being consumed flesh wise, but maybe there is the consumption of brains, the draining of blood, the the insertion of an egg inside of a local victim, so you get yourself a little tasty chest burster coming out, so that thing could be consumed. It could be a transformative process. The PC's forced to eat a thing, or at least innocent NPCs forced to eat a thing that will transform them, much like maybe drinking hag's milk turns her innocent people into her little babies that are all monstrous beasts if they consume a thing far too many times, right? You know, yep. Dead Man brings up muscle tongs, the practical tong to serve your muscles. Don't get your hands dirty anymore. Yeah, there are lots of utensils used to and how to use them. A fork versus chopsticks, right? That's a perfectly acceptable tool to use culturally. I don't know how to use them. I've always been terrible at them. I know Dante's expert at it, but even how we consume those things. How do we, when we sit down to eat, is it my food is mine, your food's yours, don't touch my plate? Or is it family style, everything located in the middle? And I remember eating at a restaurant one time where all the food, there were no plates, and the food was placed onto like like there were bread and leaves on the table, and you grasp the food items from around the table and pass them around with your fingers and place them. Now, this was many 30 years ago for me or something. There's some cleanliness issues with that, but serving food family style is a very common thing where all the food is put together in a big plate or multiple plates, and then people share from that. Or, hey, pass the potatoes around the table, and everyone scoops from it and takes what they have. Or the the idea of not knowing what foods taste like, and the whole idea is to try as many different foods as possible from many different regions, or how they're cooked in a new region. When most of us, when we think about vacations, we think about the exciting fun things. I'm going to go, I don't know, skydiving or swimming or deep sea diving and all this kind of stuff. But for many of us, it's about history, and a lot of that history deals with food. I remember going on a cruise and having banana ketchup on St. Lucia Islands, tropical Caribbean islands. There are lots of food and local food items, jerk chicken, and I can't tell you how many other things. Drinking fresh coconut out of the jungle, having literally a coconut cut out of a 30-foot tree, having the end of it cut off, and a thin bamboo straw, and is drinking the coconut right out of it. And it's something I hadn't experienced before. And so there are many types of consumables in the world where you can use those. Maybe I love the number three. So I know this isn't World Building Wednesday, but you could very well describe, I don't know, dwarves that eat battered blind fish, and they love tubers that they pull from the ceiling in their underground hovels or something, and lots of mushrooms or whatever, right? Like that's very descriptive. When maybe the elves eat twice baked honey bread, and I don't know, certain types of, I don't know, dawnflower seeds or something like that, if you want to get really stereotyped. And of course, that doesn't have to be racially set, right? Everyone from, what a better description would be, everyone from the South eats a certain type of spicy food, or everyone from the North consumes a certain type of blubber or something like that with some kind of Nordic animals or creatures, or even rare plants that are able to survive in the harsh winters in deep down in a permafrost to be dug up and used as their version of a good berry or something. It's like Scott Poe's mentioning, his druid eats dates. To me, without any context to that druid eating dates, to me makes me think of stereotypical ancient Greece or something. That's the first thing that comes to mind, but it doesn't have to be. Dates. I'm trying to think of something small like that. Um, Dates, black olives, grapes, strawberries. All of those things could be related to it. Now, later on in this week, since we will be continuing to talk about food and drink, we're going to talk about more of the action part of it. I just thought today, I think, would be a great way to like reskin and reflavor maybe some of our classic monsters in our world, and the food and drink is a perfect excuse for us to have some social interactions with them. Like, of course, I talked about hags. Yes, I know, monster manual, evil alignment, blah blah blah, yada yada. But if we want to really include them, maybe the only reason that they are included in our society is because they offer some type of food and or drink for our community. You know, much like our modern day organized crime having meals inside of restaurants. you know, hags, rakshasa. Come on, guys, give me some hell. That Minotaur we were talking about, right? Who's to say that the Minotaurs aren't known as savannah harvesters? Who's to say that they aren't out there? The Minotaurs walk up and down the fields of grapes that are used when they're creating these very expensive and very tasty wines, and that minotaurs aren't mean. Maybe they're farmers. Maybe they are cultivists of some sort. In Game of Thrones, there was the High Garden, and a whole house devoted around the food given to the population and how important they were. Maybe there is a very nefarious and notorious family or home or faction or hell, even creatures that are necessary for humanity to deal with them because they feed the realm. It could be that the goblinoids themselves live in a place where there's just something very valuable that's up in those mountains where the goblinoids are at, and we've got to deal with the ogres and hill giants and stone giants that are out into that region. And yes, they trade with us. It could be a very precarious relationship, but they trade with us their meat items, and we give them our mead. For example, um, the buying, trading, and selling of food and drink, spices are included in that. It's a pretty common thing. Salt and many other spices were measured in their value of salt or fats or jerkies, and things to keep things fresh. Again, seeds, rice, grains, all kinds of grains, maize were had value in terms of many communities, and they were measured in their weight, excuse me, and volume. Go. Sorry, trying to get back into the Discord here. Tesla pops in. Ferdinand is a minotaur, or rather, a Kythatar, as he's from Catheria, who serves as a chef at the Themyscrian embassy. History of the character has not yet been written. Ah, okay, okay. I don't know why the hands are darker colored, but okay, I'm liking the picture. I'm not sure I had to find a pretty good shirt to get that to fit, but with that burly chest, but whatever. Um, Although I think minotaurs might have a problem with humanity milking their cows. That might be a touchy issue right there. Unless the Minotaur is like, you can milk my cows if you milk me, there, buddy. Deadman says dates have been a staple food of the Middle East and the Indus Valley for thousands of years. They are believed to have originated around what is now Iraq. I'll read this in just a minute. You know, the mythological consumption of the mustard seed and the vomiting up of the Olympian gods vomited up by the Titans comes to mind as well. Anyway, it goes on to say there's archaeological evidence of date cultivation in Maragah around 7000 BCE, a Neolithic civilization in what is now Western Pakistan and in Eastern Arabia between 5530 and 5320. Prehistoric. Yeah, a a food that is extremely ancient, and the consumption of that food could really tell you a lot about that culture, right? And just a sign, like like dates, right? Dates being the staple of a particular culture, it may not tell you a lot about who they are, but it will tell you who they are when the PCs go somewhere else, or or they come upon a tribe of people. I'm thinking of stereotypical Bedouin, uh, you know, nomads that offer the PCs chai or tea and dates, or whatever, having gone on a long journey or whatever. And culturally, the idea that you are offering food and drink and security for your visitors. We've seen this done in many cultures, Viking cultures and nomadic cultures, and maritime cultures, where you're given, as long as you have been invited into someone's home and you're given food and drink to consume with them, that you are given protection under that person's roof. And so even enemies come together. I even imagine stereotypically, like Japanese, the samurai or something, getting together before a battle and talking over the you know whatever it is, dispute that they're having, and drinking tea and eating food and being served a meal, knowing that later on there will be blood. you know uh, 007, all the James Bond movies, there's always a dinner, some kind of tuxedo dinner, and threats are thrown across tables in semi-veiled attempts to intimidate the other side. And of course they have to be civil about it. And one of the great things for having a major dinner, especially with like a big bad evil guy, is that, let's assume there's 13 clans and they're all vying for power, and the player characters, of course, want to go, they want to, guard hard as a mother on the big bad evil guy, letting them know that the other 12 clans, while they might not like the evil dictator, will unleash holy hell for breaking the tradition of violence and violent assault while food and drink is being passed around, might be a good way to keep at least some of the player characters from wanting to draw swords and kill someone, especially trying to poison them or something. And then let's not forget, if your PC is an assassin, they're going to want to use some poison and kill someone. Killing someone at a dinner with thousands, hundreds or thousands of possible suspects is a pretty good reason to do it. While someone may find out that you've done such a thing, it also means that it's a great way to go running for it and being lost in the crowd, right? The date palm, commonly known as a date or date palm, is a flowering plant species, the palm family. I'm going to mispronounce all that stuff. Tesla, no, Mr. Bond, I expect you to dine. Wait, you said die? No, eat ill, Mr. Bond. You're trying to kill me. No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to digest your food. Wait, what? You mean you're trying to put me in a death trap? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to enjoy yourself. um, Oh, and before we get out of here, there's also a little bit of scatological humor with that. I mean, how many times have we seen our protagonists have to go to or hell, antagonists and such have to go to the restroom, right? So there you can have a little bit of fun with the after effects of eating certain kind of things as well. Drinking certain kinds of alcohol that have some transmutational effects on people, maybe turning purple or belching up pink bubbles or growing, I don't know, donkey ears, or your voice changing or something, or floating in the air temporarily because of massive, gnomish drink causes gas in the literal sense. Maybe your burning hand spell comes from your farts or something. I don't know. That's ridiculous. But again, if you want to get really obnoxious about these kind of things, yeah, you could go pretty ridiculous with some of the meals. And again, this could be very narratively based. So if it's narratively based, the idea that your player character, in between rests and things, is consuming something, either ritually, taking it very serious, or whether they're just scarfing down certain kinds of food, drink, and other items, I think could be really descriptive. Yep. Yeah. Charlie, we're floating it. Yep. Go. Hey. Belch, burp. Willy Wonka in a chocolate factory is a perfect example of consuming things maybe you shouldn't have, and being extruded and bobbling along, from eating the thing you shouldn't. As a matter of fact, even going to a region where, like a Fey world, where there are things that are very they are enticing to eat and consume, but there might be some unwanted side effects, including the anger of the people who live there. And of course we have the satyrs party, right? The get drunk and now you've been lost to time and space as you party and lose yourself and become one of them, trapped in a Fey party. So yeah, we're going to talk about all that later on. Just thought we would open it up here with food and drink. So guys, thank you very much. I will be in a Discord for a short amount of time. You guys have a great one. I'm out. Thank you very much for participating. See ya. Thank you very, very much for watching.